Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most significant geopolitical developments in Europe, Denmark's bold move to cut off Russia's Baltic Sea lifeline. This decision could reshape the balance of power in Northern Europe and send shockwaves across Moscow. Vladimir Putin's government now faces one of the most critical strategic challenges since the start of the Ukraine war, and it's happening right in Russia's maritime backyard. The Baltic Sea, once a vital artery for Russia's trade and military access, is now becoming a geopolitical choke point, and Denmark just tightened the grip. Russia has long relied on the Baltic Sea as a crucial maritime route. From vital oil exports leaving the port of Primorsk to military supplies reaching Kaliningrad, the Baltic has been a lifeline that connects Russia to Western markets and its isolated exclave. However, after Denmark's latest strategic action backed quietly by its NATO allies that Lifeline is under severe threat, the Danish government has decided to restrict certain Russian vessel transits and increase monitoring and control over maritime infrastructure connecting to Russia. While officially described as security measures, it's clear that the move is part of a broader Western effort to squeeze Russia's logistics and weaken its naval influence in the region. The timing could not be worse for Putin. Russia is already struggling under the weight of sanctions, a declining economy, and mounting war costs in Ukraine. Now, losing critical maritime access in the Baltic adds another layer of isolation. The Danish decision effectively means that Russia's access to the North Sea, and by extension, the Atlantic Ocean, becomes increasingly limited. For a country that depends on maritime exports, especially oil, gas, and fertilizers, this development is devastating. Moscow's propaganda machine has already tried to downplay the move, calling it temporary and bureaucratic, but analysts believe it represents a permanent geopolitical shift. Denmark's position is uniquely powerful. The narrow straits connecting the Baltic Sea to the North Sea, known as the Danish Straits, are under Danish control. Every ship heading from Russia's Baltic ports to global markets must pass through this choke point. It's a geographic reality that has existed for centuries but has never been more politically significant than it is now. By asserting greater control over these waters, Denmark isn't just sending a message to Russia, it's reshaping maritime security in Europe. For NATO, this move is seen as a defensive response to Russia's aggressive behavior in the Baltic. Moscow has increased its naval presence, conducted intelligence operations near undersea pipelines, and carried out dangerous maneuvers close to Danish and Swedish waters. Western intelligence reports suggest Russia has even attempted to map critical undersea infrastructure, such as communication cables and energy pipelines, raising fears of potential sabotage. Denmark's tightening of maritime control is therefore a preemptive strategy to protect its interests and those of its allies. The Russian response, however, has been furious. The Kremlin accused Denmark of participating in economic warfare and warned of serious consequences. Russian state media has already floated the idea of retaliatory measures, including military deployments in the Baltic region. Some reports indicate that Russia might bolster its presence in Kaliningrad, where it already maintains advanced missile systems, submarines, and nuclear-capable assets. But experts argue that these threats are more bluster than reality. With much of Russia's military resources tied up in Ukraine, Moscow's ability to project power in the Baltic is now severely constrained. Behind Denmark's decision lies a much broader European strategy. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Baltic region has become a fortress of Western solidarity. Finland and Sweden's NATO memberships have effectively encircled Russia's Baltic access points with NATO-aligned territories. Now, with Denmark's move, the circle tightens even more. Russia's Kaliningrad enclave already isolated risks becoming completely cut off from the rest of Europe. What was once a strong strategic position for Russia is turning into a vulnerable outpost surrounded by adversaries. The economic implications are equally severe. The Baltic Sea serves as a critical export route for Russian oil, timber, coal, and fertilizers commodities that keep its struggling economy afloat. If Denmark enforces stricter controls and inspections, transit times could increase drastically, raising costs and reducing profit margins for Russian exporters. Moreover, with Western insurers reluctant to cover Russian ships and ports, maritime trade risks becoming unsustainable for Moscow. The result is a slow suffocation of Russia's commercial arteries without a single bullet being fired. European energy dynamics are also shifting. The Nord Stream pipelines, once symbols of Russian, German energy cooperation, are now defunct following mysterious explosions that damaged them in 2022. Since then, Europe has moved aggressively toward energy independence from Russia. Denmark's recent action further ensures that Russia cannot use maritime routes to manipulate or threaten European energy supplies. Instead, it strengthens regional energy security and reinforces Europe's commitment to cutting its reliance on Russian resources. For Putin, the political consequences at home could be significant. Russian elites understand that the loss of maritime influence in the Baltic weakens Moscow's global posture. It exposes Russia's dependence on limited trade corridors like the Black Sea and Arctic routes, both of which have their own vulnerabilities. Domestically, this plays into a growing sense of insecurity among Russian business leaders and military strategists who once viewed the Baltic as a stable and predictable gateway. The Kremlin, in turn, may try to divert public attention by amplifying nationalist rhetoric or escalating tensions elsewhere. Meanwhile, Denmark has become an unlikely but pivotal player in European security, traditionally seen as a quiet NATO member focused on diplomacy. Denmark is now stepping into a leadership role in the Baltic. Its navy is modern, its intelligence capabilities are strong, and its geographic leverage is unmatched. By asserting authority over the Danish Straits, Copenhagen is effectively setting the rules for what can and cannot happen in the Baltic with full NATO backing. This is a remarkable geopolitical shift, demonstrating that even small nations can exert enormous strategic influence when geography and timing align. Western allies have publicly praised Denmark's actions while maintaining a diplomatic tone. Privately, however, they see this as a masterstroke, a way to constrain Russia's movements without triggering direct conflict. The U.S., the U.K., and several EU countries have reportedly shared intelligence with Denmark about suspicious Russian maritime activity, reinforcing Copenhagen's decision to tighten control. In many ways, this marks the beginning of a new phase in the standoff between NATO and Russia, one fought not just on land in Ukraine, but across the strategic waters of the Baltic. For Russia's navy, the consequences are tangible. With its Black Sea fleet under constant Ukrainian attack, and now its Baltic fleet restricted by Denmark's oversight, Russia's maritime power projection is shrinking. The once proud fleet that paraded through St. Petersburg each year is now largely symbolic. Naval operations are limited, fuel supplies are rationed, and maintenance of vessels has become increasingly difficult due to sanctions and lack of foreign components. The morale among Russian sailors, according to Western intelligence leaks, is at an all-time low. This maritime isolation also has a direct military impact. Russia has long relied on the Baltic for rapid troop transport and logistical movements to Kaliningrad and its western military district. With tighter Danish controls and expanded NATO surveillance, those movements are now under constant scrutiny. In a potential conflict scenario, Russia could find itself unable to reinforce or resupply its forces in the region, effectively neutralizing one of its key strategic outposts. That reality is likely causing significant anxiety within the Kremlin's military circles. Denmark's decision also signals a deeper European confidence in facing down Russian aggression. Only a few years ago, such an action would have been considered too provocative. But now, after 2 years of war in Ukraine, European governments no longer fear Moscow's threats the way they once did. The unity among NATO members, particularly in Northern Europe, has reached unprecedented levels. From Estonia to Norway, countries are coordinating air patrols, naval exercises, and intelligence sharing to ensure that Russia's capacity for hybrid warfare remains contained. there's also a symbolic dimension to all this. The Baltic Sea has always been a crossroads of civilizations where commerce, culture, and power intersect. For centuries, Russia sought dominance over these waters to secure its gateway to Europe, but history is repeating itself in reverse. Instead of projecting influence outward, Russia is being boxed in, isolated, and contained. Denmark's move is the latest act in this ongoing geopolitical reversal, one that may mark the end of Russia's maritime ambitions in the region for generations. The broader question now is how Putin will respond. Military retaliation against Denmark is unlikely, as it would trigger NATO's Article 5 and invite a full-scale Western response. Economic retaliation is limited, given Russia's already restricted trade with Europe. What remains is hybrid warfare, cyberattacks, disinformation campaigns, and covert operations aimed at undermining Danish and European unity. Indeed, cybersecurity experts have already reported an uptick in Russian-linked hacking attempts against Danish energy firms and government institutions since the restrictions were announced. Despite these threats, Denmark shows no sign of backing down. Its leadership insists that national security and the stability of European trade routes come first. Public support within Denmark for standing firm against Russian aggression is strong, with opinion polls showing overwhelming approval for government actions. This unity at home gives Copenhagen the political strength to withstand Moscow's pressure and continue playing a decisive role in regional security. At the same time, Russia's internal divisions are growing. Economic elites are increasingly frustrated by Putin's confrontational policies, which have turned Russia into a pariah state. Military hawks blame Western encirclement, while moderates within the Kremlin warn that further escalation could lead to total economic collapse. The cutting off of the Baltic Sea lifeline amplifies these internal conflicts as it undercuts one of the few remaining avenues for trade and influence left to Moscow. Internationally, the move has been welcomed as a sign that Europe is no longer content with reactive measures. Instead, proactive containment of Russia's maritime and military power is now the strategy. This echoes the Cold War logic of containment, but with a 21st century twist using economic and logistical constraints instead of direct confrontation. Denmark's decision is a powerful demonstration of how geography, diplomacy, and collective defense can combine to achieve strategic goals without firing a shot. Over the next few months, we're likely to see increased tension in the Baltic region. Russian naval exercises may intensify as Moscow seeks to demonstrate its continued presence. NATO will likely respond with its own drills, showcasing solidarity and readiness. But beneath the surface, the real battle will be economic and psychological about who can sustain pressure longer and who will blink first. With Russia's economy faltering and its international standing deteriorating, many experts believe Putin's position is becoming untenable. For the rest of the world, Denmark's action serves as a reminder that small, principled nations can change the course of global geopolitics. By cutting off Russia's Baltic Sea lifeline, Copenhagen has not only defended its national interests, but also struck a strategic blow against Russian expansionism. It's a move that strengthens Europe, reinforces NATO, and puts Putin's ambitions under even greater strain. As the situation evolves, one thing is certain. Russia's era of free navigation and dominance in the Baltic Sea is over. The world is witnessing the slow but steady erosion of Moscow's influence, one choke point at a time. Denmark's stand marks a new chapter in the global struggle between democracy and authoritarianism, a struggle that is being fought not just with weapons, but with strategy, courage, and control of the world's vital sea lanes.